This is Gerald Salenti, and it's Wednesday, August 24th, 2022. And we are very honored, truly honored, to have with us again, as we do every Wednesday, Judge Andrew Napolitano, a man of dignity, grace, kindness, caring, knowledge, and an authority that does not exist in the world of the so-called media world, or hardly in what used to be called the justice system in America. A man that lives by the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and knows about it and how we're losing it. And Judge, thanks for being with us again today. And you have an article coming out tomorrow about basically, we're living in a communist state or a Gestapo state where the government can invade our private property at any time. And it's really something that I would suggest that the American Revolution was also based upon.
Yes. Yes. Good morning, Gerald. It's always a pleasure to be with you. I mean, one of the last straws that tipped the minds of colonists in favor of revolution was the Stamp Act enacted by the British Parliament, supposedly to raise money. So every piece of paper in your home, every pamphlet, every financial document, every letter, even a poster you were going to nail to a tree, every newspaper had to have a British stamp on it. You had to go to a British post office, sort of, and pay for the stamp. Of course, some students at what was to become Princeton University did some calculation and realized it cost more to enforce this than was generated by the stamps. How was it enforced? It was enforced by the Writs of Assistance Act. See if this sounds familiar. Government agents went to a secret court in London and just said, "We need a search warrant." And they gave them a general warrant. So a general warrant doesn't name the place to be searched, doesn't name the person who allegedly committed the crime that they're looking for evidence for. It doesn't even name the evidence they're looking for. It basically says, search where you want and seize whatever you find. And British soldiers used these to break down the doors of colonial homes, ostensibly looking for the stamps. The cost of the British soldiers doing this, and the very few amount of colonists who paid for the stamps, made this thing more costly than it was generating. Well, what kind of a tax costs more to enforce than it collects in revenue? Unless it really wasn't a tax, unless its real purpose was to remind the colonists that the government could enter their property whenever it wanted, on the pretext of looking for stamps on pieces of paper. This only applied to the 13 colonies. It didn't apply back to Great Britain, or the king would have suffered the same fate as Louis XVI if he had tried to do that to his own people. The Stamp Act lasted for a year. The power of the government to get these secret warrants lasted until it was outlawed by the Fourth Amendment in 1791. But what happened to Trump, the raid on Mar-a-Lago, what happens every day in the United States of America, either by FBI, local or state police, enforcing these search warrants, is reminiscent of the very instances that impelled the founders to revolution. Government entering the threshold of private property on a pretext.
You talk about the Stamp Act costing more than the effects of what it was gaining. That's just about, you can say that about every government regulation.
Yes.
It costs more than look at the CIA. I mean, look at the trillions of dollars we've spent since Harry Truman invented the damn thing. And look at all the wonderful accomplishments that they've had since then. Name me one. Going agency after agency.
Well, their accomplishments are either murdering people overseas that the government doesn't like, and the government's likes and dislikes changed with the wind, And their other accomplishments are the destruction of individual liberty and personal privacy. I mean, the CIA charter, and you can Google this. The CIA charter prohibits it from being involved with law enforcement, and it prohibits it from engaging in surveillance in the United States. There were actually Republican members of the Senate who insisted on this because they were worried that they were creating another KGB. This is 1947. World War II is over, and the government is aiming its sights at Joe Stalin. And Republican senators said, "Wait a minute, we don't want another KGB here." But of course, those rules in the charter have not been honored at all. The CIA is physically present in every state house in the United States, monitoring what state legislatures and what governors do. I've had two governors tell me this, and one of them said the CIA guy was very polite and basically said, "You can kick me out, but if you do, my replacement will not introduce himself to you. He or she will get here. You just won't know who it is." I mean, this is just unbelievable. We are spies from the federal government spying on the state governments. Kick us out and we'll be replaced by spies who won't be gentlemen and won't introduce themselves to you. So these three-letter entities that the feds have created in the name of safety, FBI, CIA, DEA, BATF, Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, 4 letters. All they do is trample the Constitution, crush federalism, and crush individual liberty. And Congress keeps giving them more and more money. Congress could stop this just by defunding them, but Congress is terrified of what these entities have secretly come to learn about members of Congress. Why is the defense budget $780 billion, $30 billion more than Biden asked for? Because so many members of Congress are afraid of what the Intelligence Committee knows about them and will reveal if they don't vote for the defense budget. They also vote for the defense budget because the defense industry is strategically located throughout the United States, and no member of Congress would vote against a budget that's going to enrich an industry, even if it's a form of socialism, that exists in that member's congressional district. So these things keep getting worse and worse and worse. I don't see an end to this until the federal government keeps printing money and can't pay its bills and collapses like an overripe apple.
Well, again, the United States is doing it and getting away with it because the whole world is a mess. I mean, look what's going on now with the euro. It's now below the value of the dollar, the lowest it's been since they invented the damn thing, 20-something years ago. And so the United States could get away with it. You look what's going on in China. Their economy is going down, and they have a debt to GDP ratio of almost 300 or above. So the United States could keep playing this game because the rest of the world is so weak. And they just printed more money. They're sending another $3 billion of our money, what they call military aid, to Ukraine. People get angry at me because I express things in the proper language that they call vulgarity or cursing. It's not cursing when you're in a fight and you tell somebody, I had enough of your effing crap. That's not vulgarity. What a curse word is in vulgarity is when you call sending weapons of death, quote, military aid. It's not aid.
It's weapons of death which extend a war that shouldn't have been fought in the first place. And quite frankly, I don't know how Biden's going to get out of this, Gerald. The Ukrainians are going to lose.
Yeah.
We will have lost $60 billion, which is more than the total annual military budget of Russia, and more than the total annual government budget, local, regional, and federal, of Ukraine. All of that will be down the drain, and Putin will still have the portions of Ukraine which he argues have always been a part of Russia. And I don't know how Biden gets out of it, really. I mean,
Biden, no, but the people don't care. The average person doesn't care. They don't know. I got in a discussion with somebody the other night, a lawyer, nice guy, and how we have to defend Ukraine and you want to see this humanitarian crisis and repeating the crap that everybody says, you know. And I said, and he said, you know, this has been going on for 500 years. I said, stop right there. I said, it's been going on for 500 years, going back and forth. Then why are we getting involved in this?
Right. You know, Putin is a butcher. But as John Adams once said, if we go around the world looking for monsters to slay, there will be no end to our search. And instead of exporting liberty, we will be exporting brute force. And some of those monsters might come right back at us. I mean, you would think that that lesson would have been learned. It's hard to find a period of 5 or 6 years in American history where we weren't fighting some sort of a war. American presidents love to fight wars. They love to kill. They love to be the commander in chief. They love to beat the drums of patriotism and raise taxes and command the troops. That's not what Madison intended. The president as commander in chief meant the president as commander in chief in wartime, and only Congress can declare a war. When's the last time Congress declared a war? December 8th, 1941.
Yep.
We fought 30 wars since then, 30. Not a single one was declared by Congress. Probably
Again,
the
you
most
mentioned-
egregious example of this is George W. In Afghanistan and in Iraq. $2 trillion gone, and a million innocent human beings dead.
And we condemn the Russians.
Right.
What hypocrisy. What hypocrisy. You know, going back to what you're talking about with the government having robbed us of our privacy, where do you think, and you know, referring to what they did with Trump, what's the story that you see happening with Trump and the FBI seizing those documents that he allegedly took with him that he was not supposed to?
Well, the federal government employs the best leakers of secret information in the world. And their leakers in the DOJ have been leaking to the Washington Post and to the New York Times that the government now has over 700 classified documents that Trump either voluntarily surrendered or that it seized. And that in that category are a few dozen that are marked top secret SCI. SCI simply means so secret that it can only be stored in and examined in a government room that's impervious to surveillance and Wi-Fi, and that only certain individuals whose names are listed in a secret list somewhere can watch it. Bottom line, Donald Trump will be indicted by a federal grand jury for violating the Espionage Act. I'm of the belief that the DOJ decided to seek an indictment, and you know, if they seek an indictment, they're going to get it. A grand jury will indict a ham sandwich if the government prosecutors wanted to. I'm of the view that the government decided to seek the indictment of him before they even raided his house, that was just the icing on the cake, that they already knew that he had taken top secret materials with him. Why he took it, I don't know. It's not his property under the law. Now, the law might not be a just law. I don't believe in secrets. You don't believe in secrets. The government works for us. We don't work for the government. How can the government know some things that we can't know? But the government has written these laws that so strictly protect its secrets that it will go after a violator of the secrets with vengeance. Example, and this is a bitter irony. Donald Trump once said Edward Snowden should be executed because he exposed the surveillance that the Bush NSA and Department of Defense, NSA works in the Department of Defense, was engaged in surveilling every American. Trump is now about to be accused of violating the very same statute that his DOJ indicted Snowden for violating, for which he said Snowden should be executed. The statute is called the Espionage Act. It shouldn't be used against Snowden, in our view, an American hero, and it shouldn't be used against Trump, because documents silently sitting in his locked safe don't harm anybody. But the law is to the contrary. Who's harmed by this? The egos of the national security state, the people that run the national security state. That's who's harmed. That Snowden got away with what he did, and they're not going to let Trump get away with what he did. And I'm sorry to be saying this. He's been my friend for 35, 40 years, President Trump. His sister was one of my colleagues on the bench, and I met him through her. And then, of course, I met him at Fox. He was at Fox once a week for years. He has a lot of character flaws, but he's a far better president than what we have now. But I'm convinced they're going to indict him.
Again, this country, what's the big deal here? Again, I'm no fan of Trump's, but what's the big issue? And again, and then as you said, why did he take this stuff with him? And on the bigger note here, this country is going down big time. We've lost our freedom. They could do anything they want to us anytime, do what we've lost it. We have no freedom at all. And you're censored if you say what they call misinformation. You're blackballed from the media if you won't say what they want their audience to hear. And look what's going on now. $80 billion going to the IRS, which they shouldn't even be one, as I see it. And who are they going to go after? No, they're not going to go after the big rich people. They know how to beat the taxes, and they're playing the game, and they know how to do it. They're going to go after what's left of small businesses and we, the people of Slavelandia.
Right.
And when you talk about the IRS, as you well know, when was it that Woodrow Wilson invented the federal income tax?
It was around 1913. He said it would never exceed 3%.
And what is it now?
Well, now it's about 39%, but during Wilson's presidency, before World War I was over, it was up to 90%. This was just, and then the so-called libertarian economist, before he had his PhD and before he became a superstar at the University of Chicago, working as a clerk in the Treasury Department, came up with the idea of government withholding a portion of your wages, government getting your wages before you do. His name was Milton Friedman. So income tax withholding was a stunt suggested by a libertarian, embraced by the government. That's because the government doesn't work for us. We work for it. Literally, we work for it when it gets our money before we do.
So what is the average, you think, about 30, 40%?
It's probably about 40%, because there's no state in the union that doesn't have other taxes. Even states that don't have income taxes have high real estate taxes. So if you make $500,000 a year, you're going to pay $200,000 to the feds. I mean, you have some deductions in there. But it's become a game. It's become confiscatory. I mean, at some point, I believe all taxation is theft. I believe the government should operate on a fee for service. You want a service from the government, just like you want a service from your tailor or your barber or your doctor or your lawyer. You pay a fee for the service. Instead, that's not the way it works here. I live in a small town in Northwest New Jersey. It's 26 square miles. There's only 4,000 people that live on it. And the real estate taxes are out of sight. And I said to the mayor, I said, these taxes are terrible. How about if you compete with the next town over for my tax dollars, see who can provide me more services for less money. Now, this gentleman's older than I am. He's a pig farmer. He's a conservative Republican. He's been the mayor for 40 years. He looks at me and said, I never heard such a communist argument in my life. Communist? It's the opposite of communist. It's free market. Let the governments compete with each other rather than just imposing a tax like the mob does, pay us or else. I said, I love you, Mr. Mayor, but you're a criminal gang up the block. Every time I write a check to you guys, that's what I think of. A criminal gang. Write this check or else.
And the criminal gang is in charge.
Everywhere.
Yep. So we have to do something. You know, this is, if the people don't unite at a higher level, we're finished. The cover of the Trends Journal this week is, you know, that you support war.
There it is.
You support Satan.
I say this every week. You have the best graphic artist in the business.
Yep.
In the business. Wow.
I know. Anthony Frieda, a real man with a real heart. And that's what's happened. If you support war, you support Satan. And if you support these criminal groups called the Republicans and the Democrats, you're on the side of Satan, because they're doing nothing for we the people. They look at all the money that they're stealing from us to keep bloodying the killing fields in Ukraine. Both parties are accomplices to it. Look what they just passed with this thing of giving $80 billion to the IRS to steal more of our money. We need a new movement. And what we really need, look at the money. We just did an article in the Trends Journal 2 weeks ago. The midterm elections, $9.3 billion is going to be spent. $9.3 billion. Soros and all these others giving millions and millions to the candidates that they support. Wow. And it's, you call them, you know, congressmen. They're jerks. Government. We got a bunch of clowns running the show. Look at the morons.
Well, we do have
jerk
power.
That just got reelected in New York, running against somebody that was also in there for 30 years. What's that guy?
Gerald Nadler.
Who?
Gerald Nadler.
Nadler. What a little moron.
He's chair of the House Judiciary Committee.
What a little arrogant, stupid moron.
Gerald, they love power.
Right in front of your eyes, a little arrogant, stupid moron, and get on the stage with all of the rest of them, except a very few like Massey and Rand Paul.
Right. I don't know how Massey and Rand Paul put up with the people that they have to work with. I guess they have a sense of humor. They laugh at them. But the big government Republicans, Mitch McConnell, Kevin McCarthy, and almost all Republicans are just as bad as the big government Democrats. It's just a Republican version of big government, welfare for big pharma, big banks, and the rich, versus a Democratic version of big government, welfare for the poor and the middle class. All they want to do is divide up the spoils, and what they gain by hiring another 80, what they gain politically by hiring another 80,000 IRS agents is beyond me. How can anybody campaign on that? Nobody likes the IRS.
Yep.
I don't get it. I just don't get it, how that helps them.
Well, I'll tell you how that you get it. These are mentally ill, arrogant people that are running and ruining our lives. How anyone could look up to a politician, grow up, like you talked about a pig farmer mayor for 40 years. For 40 years, this guy's playing mayor where you live.
They keep the taxes down, but most of the taxes here in New Jersey are collected by the locals, but imposed by the county and the state. So, I mean, things like garbage collection. It is a club. It is a government club. There's no question about it.
And like George Carlin said, it's one big club and you ain't in it.
Right.
Thanks so much, Judge. We're going to take a break for the next 2 weeks. We'll see you then after Labor Day. And thank you for everything that you do and all that you give to we the people of the United States. Thank you.
Thank you, Gerald. All the best. Have a great